We're back tonight here on In Focus. Let's stay with that issue of voting and voter registration, and the IEC, of course, as you heard there in the conversation earlier on, denying that they prioritize Sadtu members or teachers in particular to work during voter registration. The Red Berets are calling on its members to guard against members of unions affiliated to the ANC of working as election officials. EFF spokesperson Sinawo Tambo joins us now for more on that. Good to have you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Greetings to your viewers.
Sadtu not taking too kind to that call, saying it's hate speech, it's unfair discrimination, and certainly it's inciting harm to the people who would be teachers and affiliated to Sadtu.
For a union of teachers, that sounds very idiotic, because for us to say that the democratic process in South Africa is tainted by the participation of a union that is affiliated to Cosatu, which has declared its support for the African National Congress, is not an incitement of violence. It's pointing out objective facts, that they are diluting our democratic process and our electoral process. Sadtu itself has now called through its General Secretary on its members to plug in with the PECs, the RECs and BECs of the ANC to encourage people to voter registration. So on one side, they're working with the ANC to push people to the voter registration polls. On the other side, they're the officials. How is that an intimidation of violence, to point out this clear conflict of interest, this clear bias, and this clear infiltration of our electoral system? So it's idiotic for a union of teachers to think that is an incitement of violence. In fact, we were speaking with the SAFM earlier today. The IEC doesn't seem to have a verification process of the backgrounds of people it affiliates with in terms of the staff that it hires. So I could, as Sinawo Tambo, the spokesperson of the EFF, apply to be an official of the IEC, and they are not going to disqualify me simply because they can't practice a bias against a union or political party. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, but they say there's no policy that would say don't hire a teacher, or a policy that would say don't hire a shop steward or don't hire a cleaner. It's everyone in South Africa who can vote surely can participate in that particular process, unless they've occupied prominent political position, or unless they've got, particularly in their case, a criminal record where they can participate in those processes.
Look, there ought to be a principle where if I declare that I have a desired outcome in the electoral process, I surely can't be an electoral official. If I've declared myself as being part and parcel of an entity or an organization that is affiliated or part and parcel of an organization that is contesting that election, I can't be part and parcel or be a custodian of that electoral process. It's a conflict of interest, and this is simply logical. We don't care about Sadtu, we don't care about Cosatu, we have no personal beef with them. But simply because they have declared their interest in the outcomes of the elections, they can't then be the custodians of the elections at the same time. The IEC has no constitutional mandate to hire teachers as people who must be electoral officials. If anything, if Sadtu really cared about the labor space in South Africa and the job space in South Africa, they should be withdrawing teachers who already have employment and remuneration and incomes, and allowing that space to be occupied by unemployed graduates, people with qualifications, people who are literate, who can preside over that process, who do not have another stream of income. Yeah. Sadtu teachers are double dipping, and that's something that should be ashamed of in such a high unemployment environment in South Africa.
In fact, I see saying that's really a non-issue if you look at the numbers this time around. 69,000 people who would have been brought in for this weekend's registration. Only 5,000 are employed.
One is too many. One is too many. If the EFF were to go out on a massive program of registering its members, its officials and its leaders in parliament and its central command team to be electoral officials in the IEC, there'd be an uproar in this country. There is no political party outside of the ANC that ought to be comfortable with the fact that an affiliate of the ANC is going to preside over the ballots of our election. It's something we must fight tooth and nail. We must fight it legislatively. If we must fight it judicially. But now we are raising the consciousness and awareness to our people that it is abnormal that a trade union that is affiliated to the ruling party presides over our ballots, especially in an election that is going to be the most important since 1994.
Yeah, but EFF has been part of the regional and national political party liaison committees where I believe, I'm told by the IEC, names are brought there. Nobody is taken into the system without political parties having input. And that you could go and consult with your local people on the ground, and they can raise objections if there are any. And you can bring those to the IEC. And they're saying there is that kind of engagement and process.
I think it's a tedious process, right? So consistently, the EFF has always raised a concern about Sadtu's participation in the electoral process of South Africa. But the fact that they have no verification systems to understand who is affiliated with what, whether they have declared as an entity or as an individual what the outcome of the election should be is concerned. So we know now that the only way to challenge the participation and presence of a trade union affiliate of the ANC as IEC officials is to raise an objection. We are going to do that. That is why we have called on all the ground forces of the EFF. The Commander-in-Chief has done that at the various ground forces forums we've been having over the past 2 weeks. We are calling on our ground forces who are in the communities, who know who are the members of Sadtu. If you see an IEC official whom you know is Sadtu members, you must raise that with the EFF, you must raise that with the IEC, and we're going to raise objections because this is the first voter registration process. And we are going to use that opportunity not only to register voters en masse who are going to elect the EFF into government in 2024, but also to identify the infiltration of Sadtu into the IEC. It's tantamount to capture, and our members are going to identify them. We're going to raise those objections in a civil manner, and we hope that they're going to get it into their consciousness that they're not entitled as a union to be trade union affiliates. They must leave those positions open for unemployed graduates and people who need jobs and not double dip as teachers and presiders over our electoral process.
Yeah. So historically, I mean, that would have been a function of the IEC using a lot of schools for their as voting stations and for registration purposes. Two, they're saying it's a position that requires one with some degree and level of supervisory capacity, and teachers would have lent themselves naturally to that criteria.
It's a non-issue. The fact that it's in schools doesn't mean that teachers should automatically get the positions. It's greed, actually. Sadtu must be ashamed of itself that as an organization that claims to represent workers' interests and the building of our economy and the creation of jobs, that they are so greedy that they want their teachers to continue to be IEC officials simply because we host elections or voter registration processes on the schools in which they teach. That's almost a mafia cartel type of operation. Let's open up the space. Let's democratize that space to allow people to come and be part and parcel of that process as well. People who need jobs, people who need to learn either supervisory capacity, people who are literate, people who have got qualification skills to preside over that process. We're not saying those people are going to be neutral, but at least they don't belong to an entity that has openly declared its interest in the outcome of the election in 2024.
Yeah. Let's interrogate that a little bit. I mean, if we are to look at, for example, other organizations or labor unions that have not necessarily affiliated with the AFF, but would have participated in, for example, your call for a national shutdown, like Sadtu. And they would have been very vocal, for example, about not wanting the ANC to be in power. Because they have said those things, are you saying they shouldn't be participating in IEC programs?
Sadtu has not actively organized for the electoral victory of the EFF. They have not called on its provincial or regional or branch structures to go out and work hand in hand with EFF structures to ensure that voters come out and register to vote for the ANC or for the EFF. So Sadtu is an entirely different story. We had a common interest and common principle: ending load shedding, ending corruption, creating employment. Those demands are some demands that Cosatu itself should also hold. So we're not going to demonize people because they hold common political principles. To say that a certain political party must win an election is not a political principle. It's a desire. It's an outcome that you want to determine. And Cosatu and Sadtu have the capacity to determine, alter, and dilute the electoral process to ensure that their desired political outcome, not political principle that will benefit the majority of the country, becomes a reality. So they have a secular interest. The interest of Sadtu and the EFF during the national shutdown were national interests. But the interest to ensure the ANC wins an election is not a national interest. It's a partisan interest. And that's something that is entirely different.
You're sitting here now and you're saying you are raising consciousness of your members to be on the lookout. But the statement or the comment that would have raised the ire of the union is, we must make sure that the staff members of the IEC are not Sadtu members. How are you going to make sure? Because one, there's no policy, there is no law that would prevent them from doing that. But when you're saying you're going to make sure, how exactly are you going to make sure?
No, that's their own paranoia. If they're scared, then it's their own levels of illiteracy that are existing amongst them, as I've mentioned before. To say we're going to make sure that they're not part and parcel of that process doesn't infer violence, doesn't infer intimidation. There's a process that the IEC has outlined where we can raise objections. We're going to exhaust that option. And of course, we'll exhaust any other options that are available to us in our democratic dispensation, which may include protest. So to say we're going to make sure that they don't infiltrate our electoral process is not a threat. It's our protection, actually, of the democratic processes in South Africa. And that's what we're saying we're going to do. Their illiteracy is prevailing over them. And it's not our problem, it's not our concern. They can write whatever they want to say, but we have determined ourselves as an organization. We met with the IEC in the third elections task force meeting of the EFF earlier this week, and we raised this concern with them, that you have no constitutional mandate to hire teachers. Why do you feel chained and bogged down to this position? So we're going to make sure, and if they feel threatened by that, then I think that as a teachers' union, they should reflect.
Not really. Maybe threatened? Well, they do call it a threat, but also they think it's an anti-worker position.
It's anti-worker to want to double dip. It's anti-worker to want to have an income as a teacher and an income as an IEC official. They know the higher levels of unemployment in this country. Why do they want to monopolize opportunities to get income? That's what Sadtu is saying, that they want to monopolize an opportunity to make an income in the form of being an IEC official or an IEC staff member by taking the teachers who make money 12, 11 months a year, including bonuses, and making them IEC officials as well. It's not a reserve or a privilege of teachers to preside over the electoral process. And I think that's what the ANC has instilled in them. And that's why they're part and parcel of that alliance. It's an alliance of people who have self-benefit. If they're not in an alliance to ensure that SACP members become ministers, they're in an alliance to ensure that teachers preside over the electoral process. We're not going to allow that. It's patronage. So we are saying that if they have a true interest of raising the economy of South Africa, of democratizing employment and increasing employment, they should know that the teachers make an income. They have jobs. Why do you want to monopolize that space of being an IC staff member or official? They should withdraw, in fact.
The big challenge, of course, is that of getting young people to go and register this weekend. IEC setting itself a mere target of 1 million when there is a huge chunk, close to, 16 million people that need to be brought into the process. What's your view on that?
The EFF has established various committees, which includes a youth and student committee that is going to be tasked with ensuring that young people go out and register to vote. So it's part and parcel of our electoral program. And we have frequent reporting meetings to ensure that which sectors have we targeted as an organization to ensure that our people come out and register to vote. So if you look at the political space in South Africa, there's no political party that is as aggressive about voter registration as the EFF, because we have an understanding that we're not going to win electoral power based on the registered voters of disgruntled people who have left other political parties or are disillusioned with the political space. We're trying to create a new voter base, and that voter base is going to deliver the economic freedom fighters into government. So we're the leading organization in terms of encouraging voter registrations, because we're not scared. So an organization that is in power will be scared of new voters, because new voters don't owe them any allegiance. They can't be blackmailed with apartheid. They can't be blackmailed with the struggle. They're living the contemporary conditions of South Africa, and they are not likely to be able to support an organization on the basis of loyalty. They support an organization on the basis of service delivery and capacity exhibited to challenge socio-economic issues in the country. So voter registration is important, but it's a tool that is most powerful in the hands of the opposition. So the ruling party has no interest in that. That is why we must detach its affiliates from presiding over the electoral process.
Sinawo Tambo, appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much for coming on. And In Focus did reach out, by the way, to Sadtu for their right to respond to this conversation. We were unable to secure their official at the time of going on air, but I'm sure they will be responding at a later stage.